Welcome, friends. It's nice to have you here with me tonight, as I regrettably need to check in on the land where they keep tabs on the Duggar family. A news shocker just broke in the Duggar Snark Reddit community, and it leaves me wondering what's going to come out in the near future about the Duggars. Because a couple of years ago, a verified bodyguard who worked for the Duggars and called himself Artemis decided to speak out in the Reddit Duggar Snark group. He hosted and asked me anything so group members could throw questions his way. Most Redditors are in agreement. This seemed like the most plausible and unbiased AMA available on the Duggars, and it divulged some crazy secrets. But a couple of months after Josh was convicted, the AMA was removed from Reddit by Artemis himself. People kept looking for it, but it was long gone, and its secrets were only kept alive by chatter in the group. However, a few days ago, Artemis resurfaced. It looks like he might be preparing to write and release a book this time about his time with the Duggars. He makes no bones about not caring what people think about his choice in this matter. He feels like he has a right to speak out on his experience, and if he makes money off his book in the process, then he feels he's no different than the Duggars themselves. Here's what he had to say most recently. Good writing session yesterday. I edited a story that I've never shared in full. A late night conversation in a driveway with Josh and a passenger he was trying to hide. It was my most shocking experience on that gig. I've shared it with my teammates and an anonymous official. If you're lost, let me explain. You see, Artemis claims he was hired by a company back in 2015 to be a bodyguard for Josh Duggar. Artemis states that this company was actually hired by TLC. His work started directly after it came out that Josh was cheating on Anna, but before the SM scandal broke. Artemis was specifically assigned to Josh and supposedly spent a lot of time with him over the summer of 2015. Artemis continues to make no bones about it. He didn't like Josh, took him for a predator right off, and saw a lot of crazy and inappropriate things happening at the house, not the last of which was Josh being left alone with children. Shortly after Artemis started, the SM scandal broke, and Artemis was actually present when the girls gave their TV interview defending their brother. Artemis continued to watch Josh being treated like a king, and witnessed him doing things like climbing into a swimming pool when it was full of super young kids. No adults or people his age were in the pool, and he was just being creepy. Like, who at 30 years old, having just been accused of SM and cheating on your wife, wants to spend all their time playing in water with a bunch of kids under 10? Artemis also mentioned he saw Josh watching PORN on his phone while driving. So you get why Artemis always had a bad feeling about Josh. The second part of the post reads like this. The person in hiding was one of Josh's sisters. It was 3 a.m. and Josh was supposedly working on a house he was flipping. He actively concealed that one of his sisters was with him. I reported it. Redditors are freaking out to find that Josh was left alone with a younger sister at 3 a.m. in the morning. What could he have been doing? Why was he doing it? And why did he feel the need to try to hide it from the bodyguard? Here's what Redditors had to say. Yolanda, be cool. The fact that he hid it from the bodyguard is what raises hairs on the back of my neck. Like, I find it plausible that Josh and JD or Joe or whoever might hide a case of beer at a work site and go there late at night to work when actually they're just hiding that they like to drink from Jim Bob and Mish. But if it were something that banal, would Josh hide it from the bodyguard? No, he would have likely invited him to crack a cold one with him. Hiding it from the bodyguard says to me that whatever Josh was doing, he knew it would look bad to everyone, not just the people in their super fundy cult. Emily says, I have so many questions. I honestly don't know where to begin. Southern Nanny, this. My heart can't take it. I'm exhausted with the stories that come out of that house. PNW girl. It makes me terribly sad to realize how much more we care about the safety girls than their own parents did, and Anna's parents sold her to a monster. Jenny from another block. Too many kids. Boob and Mish probably never know where their kids are, and they obviously don't care. The one that definitely noticed is whomever the girl's buddy was. This buddy either told her parents and they ignored or didn't care, or the buddy didn't say a thing because who knows? Maybe the parents were asleep. Maybe it was not the first time this happened and the parents have disregarded it in the past. Or maybe the buddy was afraid of the parents' reaction. Either way, it is the parents' fault. It's not the sister mom's fault. Luna Mia. Jim Bob and Michelle are horrible people. They knew what he's done in the past. Either they let him be alone with the minor or they didn't notice a minor was missing at 3 a.m. Honey Baby 2019. They knew and they did not care. Kitten in the Mitten. Josh wants to take a minor female child to a secondary location alone to work, which should be a red flag, but he said he was super sorry, so we shaved his head, so Jesus told us it was fine. To help from a law enforcement standpoint, this is what most likely happened based on what would happen in any situation with any person. Security sees person he is responsible for protecting, has conversation, and sees something illegal. Not necessarily up to security to intervene depending on what it is. Drugs, alcohol, no big deal, not his problem to solve. However, security sees something so upsetting, so he feels he cannot keep silent. He not only reports to his work partners he hands off security detail with, he reports it to local authority of some sort. This indicates to me that the passenger was in some form of distress. Otherwise, why would he have been shocked? What's shocking about having a sibling with you? Security has stated he is morally ambiguous. So he said that before in the prior AMA. So it would have had to have been something overwhelming to shock him and cause him to step out of his boundaries of normal procedures. This is my opinion, but it's based on how things work in emergency services, fire, rescue, law enforcement. And then Sign Up is another Redditor who responds. The thing is, everybody knew Josh's history with his sister, so seeing him hiding a young sister at 3 a.m. would probably have been disturbing without any other shocking details. The background alone would have made it obviously bad. And I totally agree. If this is true, Artemis just seeing Josh out with a younger sister at 3 a.m. in the morning after the SM scandal had broke would have been enough for him to say something is really wrong here and this isn't okay. So getting back to the fact that Artemis's first AMA has been deleted. Most likely, Artemis decided to delete his original Reddit post so he could more successfully use the material in his upcoming book. If you're not already aware, I have screenshots and I copied Artemis's AMA before he deleted it, so I'll go over some of the most shocking parts of it now. During this time, and the juicy secrets he reveals about Josh seem head-on without being crazily over the top. So, let's take a moment to head down this rabbit hole. I was a Duggar bodyguard. Ask me anything. I spent 20 years doing personal protection work. I've protected authors, activists, journalists, diplomats, foreign heads of state, actors, athletes, and politicians. I spent the summer of 2015 in Tawnytown, Arkansas. Started his time with the Duggars working for Josh and Josh's family, and then eventually asked to be switched out and was sent to work for Jill and her family for a period of time. Question: were you assigned to be security for any specific Duggar? Did any of them talk to you? How did the Duggars treat the security? Artie responds, I did security for Josh until I couldn't take it anymore, and then I worked for a different family member. And later we'll find out that he was working for Jill for a period of time, and he has really good things to say about Jill and Derek. Question: how do you think Josh is going to do in prison? What's his persona inside going to be? Response: I think Josh will have a difficult time in prison. And the next responder says, I'm neither surprised nor upset about this. And this was during the time when people were just realizing that Josh was going to be convicted of CSAM, and a lot of people were wondering what things would be like for him in prison. And Artie, the bodyguard, is another one who calls out Anna Duggar for not being what she seems on TV. Question: did you feel like you were in the Twilight Zone? Was Josh a prick or a politician? Was Michelle motherly? Did she play it up for the bodyguards like she did for the camera? Is Anna as naive and meek in person, or was that for the camera? Response: we called Tawny Town Mars. Michelle didn't seem all that motherly, and Anna is definitely not naive or meek. Question: how much homeschooling was actually going on during this time period? Was there anything about the kids' education that felt off to you? Did you see obvious signs of learning disabilities or whatnot that the parents were just ignoring? Did Michelle teach at all, or was Jana or Jess's husband the main teacher? Response, and I love how he goes straight to the point. I didn't see any homeschooling going on. And the next responder says, I don't think the kids have either. I found this kind of funny. Once again, I really like Artie. I think he's right to the point. He's letting us know what he saw and what he didn't see, and he's not even really giving an opinion on it. I want to mention, though, it appears that a good part of his job was during the summer, so it's also possible that it wouldn't have been a time when they were homeschooling anyway. We don't have the exact dates of his employment, so I can't know for sure if it was during the school year at all. I think this next response kind of speaks to how isolated the Duggars can be on their compound in Tawny Town. Question: did Josh and Anna have close friends? Response: I'm not sure. The dude that owns Sam's furniture store was around a lot. I got the impression that he was more of an opportunist than a friend. He represented himself as a good friend, though. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's thought about this a lot for Anna and for all the other kids as well. I often wonder, do they even have any kind of opportunity to make friends that are outside of the bubble that Jim, Bob, and Michelle have created for them? If not, then they're not really going to be able to hear opposing points of view. And certainly we've seen that over the years with this family, that they're very isolated, and not many of the children seem to espouse any beliefs that go against their parents. Question: did Josh treat you as a human being or as one of the help? I get the feeling he's an arrogant douche. Response: Josh was civil to me. He absolutely never gave me straight answers to even simple questions. And another responder says, straight from the Jim Bob School of the Grift. If you never give a straight answer, no one can ever hold you to anything. Question: did the parents have anger issues and yell often like the rumors state? Response: outwardly, they keep it together. That said, I found both of them to be seething just under the surface. Just a personal observation. Question: do you feel TLC had enough information about shady illegal acts to go to the authorities, or was their presence simply enabling bad behavior behind the scenes? Response: good question. I think TLC made a deal with the devil when it came to the Duggars. That show made TLC a lot of money. They did whatever they could to keep that train on the tracks. Question: ever want to punch out the person you were protecting? Response: more than once, and not just Josh. Okay, now we'll get into some more of his personal feelings about Josh. Question: anything creepy he said to you personally? What would people say to him in public if they recognized him? Did he seem different around some people and not others? Response: My very first impression of Josh was that he was a predator, so almost everything that came out of his mouth I found creepy. Most folks would ignore him in public with a few exceptions. He and I left a restaurant earlier than he would have liked because of an angry gentleman staring at him like he wanted to boot stomp him for dessert once. Question: do you think you would have instinctively picked up on his predatory nature if you hadn't known about the In Touch article prior to meeting him? Was his offness that blatant? Response: yes, I would have picked up on his predatory behavior without the In Touch article. Hypervigilance is my main symptom of PTSD, and it served me very well as a security contractor. One of my superpowers is spotting a predator. And I think somewhere in the AMA he goes on to talk about PTSD from his military service. I didn't include that in this AMA because it wasn't related to the Duggars. Question: was there ever actually a reasonable threat to the family? Response: yes and no. We were hired to keep Josh safe and out of the spotlight while the network decided what they were going to do with the show. I had more than one experience in public with Josh where I felt he was in danger. He was oblivious to it. We were also tasked with avoiding paparazzi, which was a fairly difficult task. Also, random fans would show up at all hours saying God told them they needed to be there. And we'll hear more about this later in the AMA, but apparently, according to Artie, the Duggars had this whole thing going on where they would allow fans and random people to come and visit them and spend time at the house and sometimes even sleep over. Question: in Ginger's book, it was mentioned that the Duggars would sometimes let random families and fans stay with them at the big house, and that led to someone stealing her diary and trying to sell it on eBay. Did the Duggars still allow random strangers to visit or stay with them, or were there any church families who tried to stay with them while you were there? I'm thinking about J-Rod as an example. They continued to allow randos to spend the night, something I found super creepy. It's one of Jim Bob's side hustles. I'm sure we all know that this is very disturbing to hear, especially considering what Jim Bob knew had happened to his daughters with Josh years before. It's really scary that he let random people continue to stay in the home. Here's a funny one. Question: did they ever make the barbecue tuna in your presence? Did you try it? Response: no, and no tater tot casserole. Question: did JB and Michelle seem close to their children at all or actively parent in front of you, considering most of the kids raised the younger ones? Response: it seemed like the kids were on their own unless there was some kind of event going on. They did quite a few family outings. If they were going to be seen, then it seemed like Michelle was more attentive. JB, not so much. Question: did you witness any emotional, verbal, or physical inappropriate behavior in the home? Did Josh ever interact with his kids in a normal parent way? Response: yes, in a sense that I think the way Jim Bob and Michelle handled all of it was inappropriate as hell. The girls really were treated like they were part of the problem and that everyone had to pay the most attention to Josh. And the responder below goes on to say what we're all thinking. This is stomach churning and really sheds a lot more light on what is behind the statements that some of the girls have released recently. Question: you said you felt protective about the girls. And earlier in the AMA, some questions I think were asked about the way that he split up working for Josh and Jill. And he mentioned that although he didn't care for Josh, he cared a lot about Jill and Jessa. You've said you felt protective about the girls. Do you think any of them are still reachable? Could they break free? Response: I want the girls to live happy, joyous lives free from trauma and everything that comes with it. I don't really care what that looks like as long as they are happy. I totally agree with this statement and couldn't have said it better myself. A lot of people really push that like Jill or some of the other siblings need to leave fundamentalist Christianity or Christianity in general, and I don't think that that's very fair. I believe that any way they want to live their lives, as long as they're happy and they're treating their children appropriately and with respect, then I can be happy for them. Question: what's the weirdest thing you ever saw? Not something sinister or bad, but just weird. I'm so curious. Response: a Jeep rolled up into Jill's driveway one night. A lady got out of the Jeep and told me she was going to the house because God told her to. She wasn't concerned that I was there telling her not to. Question: were there many situations that you felt uncomfortable with or that you were told to look past, pretend didn't happen? And Artie just responds: I was uncomfortable the entire time I was there. Question: you stated Anna is not a victim. Can you elaborate? Response: this is my personal opinion. According to Josh, she knew about the SM from the start. I understand the dynamics in a cult, and I understand how gaslit she is on a regular basis. At some point, the facts have to come through, and she has chosen not to address those facts. I'm also aware that this is a touchy subject on here. I'm Team Anna can go F herself. Question: can you give us an insight into the Megyn Kelly interview? I rewatched it the other day and it didn't age well, where Jill and Jessa coach what they said. Did they really decide to do it for themselves to set the record straight? How were the other girls during it? I just have so many questions about that whole day. Response: I am reasonably sure that the Megyn Kelly interview was the brainchild of Chad Gallagher and Legacy Consulting. Chad was one of Huckabee's guys and he was running PR. I don't know if anyone was coached. I wasn't in the room for the interview. I held the door for Megyn to walk in, then waited outside with her local security guy and the rest of the team. Question: in your opinion, are JB and Michelle truly down the cult rabbit hole, or are they more opportunists than believers? Same question about Josh. In other words, do they cynically use their religious beliefs to excuse or minimize Josh's behavior, or do they truly believe his perversions are a test from God? Also, it sounds like you have a very interesting career. Have you thought of writing a book? Response: I think Jim Bob is a grifter first. I think he co-opted Christianity to get the most out of his grift. I think if it wasn't religion, it would have been something else. I have considered writing a book. I have a collection of essays written. I think this is spot on, and I talked about this in a video I did about Jim Bob, where his personality really lends to being a salesman. I know he was like a used car salesman at one point in time, and Josh was as well, but a lot of people have mentioned that for Jim Bob, it's all about making the money and being financially sound. Okay guys, this is one of my favorite revelations from this AMA, and it speaks so much to where Jim Bob's head was at when it comes to Josh. Question: are there any surreal moments that stand out to you, especially from when you first started working with the Duggars? Any moments that made you do a double take or stood out as really odd? Also, other than the Duggars, and if you're not allowed to say who's your favorite client you've ever protected. Okay, so listen to his response, guys. It's crazy. Response: my first meeting with the family was ridiculously surreal for me. They were holed up on a ranch in Jay, Oklahoma. So apparently this is where the Duggars went, and they took all of their kids when the In Touch article broke that Josh had SM'd his sisters. They were holed up on a ranch in Jay, Oklahoma, and the place had a summer camp vibe to it. Everyone kept insisting that Josh's behavior had been dealt with, and everything was just fine now. Nobody had dealt with anything, and Josh was introduced to me by a laughing Jim Bob as the man of the hour. Can you imagine? They're sending a bodyguard. I'm sure it was probably a team of multiple people down there to help the Duggars, to try to protect and make sure that they're okay with this article coming out. And Jim Bob thinks it's all funny and hilarious, and he refers to Josh as the man of the hour. Because once again, everything revolves around Josh so many times over. It's crazy. Okay, and here's another equally revealing bit of information that I think is important to highlight. Question: what was your most WTF moment? A response: I had several. The late night plane trip was one of the biggest. So, at some point in the AMA, and I didn't save this post, they asked Artie about like anything strange that had happened during his time working, and he mentioned that one of the younger kids was injured, and instead of taking them to the local hospital, they had John David fly his plane like out of state to a doctor that they use from the IBLP, and they didn't want to go to the hospital. They thought it would be on the news and everything, and he thought that was pretty crazy. Okay, but here he talks about something else. He says, the 4th of July party I attended with had a fairly large WTF moment as well. The house had a pool. A lot of the kids were swimming. Josh was the only adult to get in the pool, and I found that super creepy. I think from an outsider, maybe it doesn't sound weird that Josh would get in the pool, but I just have a trust of this guy that he knows what he's talking about, and from his point of view, it felt like something was wrong about it. And I just wanted to show that some of the other commenters responded, oh yeah, there's a user on here on Reddit who did another AMA and said that they were at the party and they remarked about the exact same thing. And the next user says, I remember that, and not one parent thought it was odd that a known P, Josh, was in the pool playing with the kids. So it's interesting to see that there's a lot of cooperation between multiple sources here. Question: could you sense the financial power struggle Jim Bob was putting his children through? Response: I could plainly see that everything was about money to Jim Bob. Okay, and I think this question and answer, is the most shocking for people who haven't read this AMA before, and I see how it fits so well with Josh and his personality. Question: did Josh seem to try and sneak away, always on his phone, computer, probably feeding his P and CSAM addiction? Response: okay, here is a juicy one. I'm glad this was asked. Josh kept his phone on a hands-free stuck to his windshield. There was more than one occasion where I saw him watching P on his phone while driving. I was in the follow car, and he either didn't know or didn't care that I knew. Yeah, I'm sure at this time, Josh, having just arrived home from DC where he had all this freedom, we now know that he was having affairs out there and going to strip clubs and all of that, allegedly. He's coming back to his family, having to stay in Tawnytown, Arkansas. It doesn't surprise me that he would be in a situation where he's not getting a lot of privacy. You know, he finally had this freedom and went crazy in DC. Now he has zero privacy, and so he's got to feed his P addiction anywhere in any way that he can. And then I just personally appreciate and like this last response. Question: you said on Twitter you have complex opinions of Jill and Derek. I do too. Can you elaborate more? For me, I think he's a narrow-minded bigot, but he has helped Jill tremendously. Seems to be doing right by his sons, got away from JB, and I was touched how he treated Anna at the trial. Response: my observation, Derek is a loving husband to Jill. Jill is a great mom. I have a big protective spot in my heart for both of them. Some people say the Duggar secrets have only just started rolling downhill, and there will be many more shocking stories to come. That makes me sad, and while I hope the truth comes out, I also hope it's not as bad as I'm imagining. That's it for now, friends. I'll see you back here next time. Until then, I hope you take some time to head down your own rabbit hole.